So good evening and welcome to Berkeley. Thank you for being here. I'm Michael Bolden, Dean of the School of Journalism. And we're delighted to welcome you for this very Berkeley celebration of photojournalism, music, culture, and counterculture. I want to thank Jonathan Logan, who honored his parents, Reva and David, in creating this space that you're sitting in. This is the Logan Multimedia Center, as well as the school's Reva and David Logan Gallery of Documentary Photography, where you were observing the photos earlier tonight. And Jonathan has also helped to make our excellent photojournalism program possible. I also want to thank those of you who have generously supported the Jim Marshall Fellowship, especially Amelia Davis, Jim's longtime associate and the curator of his archive. The fellowship gives our photography students the support they need to accomplish great journalism inspired by photographers like Jim and Amelia. We are grateful to have Jim's brilliant photographs in the Reva and David Logan Gallery. I enjoy them every day walking through the gallery to my office. They inspire me. I've been privileged to be part of much great journalism during my career, but photography has always been magical. Brilliant photographers like Jim are alchemists. They cast a spell, they capture a moment, and they transport memories into the future. They provide an ever-watchful eye that allows us to share the emotions of our society's highs and lows, joys and pains. They celebrate our mutual humanity. Thank you all for being part of our UC Berkeley journalism community at a time when photojournalism is a critical vehicle for understanding our world. Your engagement with us is an essential part of who we are. I would now like to introduce you to a man who has spent decades building UC Berkeley's dynamic photojournalism program through the many changes in technology that have occurred. Ken Light, our Reva and David Logan Chair in Documentary Photography. Ken is a journalist and artist whose work provides an incisive, beautiful, and sometimes raw look. Well, see, here we go. At our country, our people, and our politics. Ken has documented America's social and cultural landscape in poignant ways for more than 50 years. And in the last few weeks, I've enjoyed getting to know more about him and discussing our mutual love of photography. We're lucky that Ken is here at Berkeley, training the next generation. Ladies and gentlemen, Ken Light.
Thank you, Michael. And Michael has just joined Berkeley journalism, and it's really wonderful to have you here. And I don't know, you're the 7th dean, 16th dean? 8th dean. Okay. The first dean is back there on the wall, who hired me, which is kind of scary.
Wow. Seriously?
Seriously, yes. So we're so excited that you are here. Thank you for coming out and looking at Jim's wonderful work. Our events here at Berkeley are made possible by the generosity of many supporters who believe that to have democracy, we need to have truthful and deeply reported journalism and photography. I wanted to thank a few people tonight, right? Yeah, especially now. I wanted to thank a few people tonight who are with us. My friend and J School graduate, Bob Bishop, who's sitting over there. Bob is a J School graduate who's stepped up many, many times to support various different programs, including photography. Thank you so much, Bob. And of course, John Logan, my good friend again. We're going to thank you, John. No.
Thank you.
John with his family have been steadfast supporters of our school. John was instrumental in working with his parents, David and Reva Logan, to endow our gallery, to support our student photo magazine called Realize. We have a biennial photo book symposium and support a chair in photojournalism, which I currently hold. When David Logan and I talked back in Chicago a long time, how many years ago is that, John?
I wasn't actually out of diapers.
Okay, there you go.
No comment.
When David and I,
I've heard of the meeting.
You've heard of the meeting.
Very important.
when David and I talked back in Chicago with John, I promised David to create events that would reach out to the community. And this is an example of one of those events that we continue to do in the gallery, in the community, and was made possible by John's big support and David, Logan, and Reva, their support of photojournalism and of our school. And really, to have someone like John and his family step forward, you don't understand in a university like this where we're getting cut back, and now, of course, Washington's going to cut even more. Having supporters who step forward and give financial support is so important. One of the results of the Jim Marshall show, and we did a show of Jim's hate photographs, which was 4 or 5 years ago, we created a fellowship. Amelia and I talked and we said, let's create a fellowship in Jim's name. Because Jim was such a part of the Bay Area community, with the idea of helping students who come in, who you can imagine it's expensive to go to the university, and they need support. And the idea was every year to give a fellowship to one. In some years we split it and we gave 2 students. And this has been, for our students, this has been incredibly important, not only to receive the financial support, but also to be honored with a fellowship as a young student. It's been funded year by year with the generous support over many years by Jeff Goodby, as well as with Amelia. I know you got Carlos Santana to do skateboard decks, and I know we got some funds for the sale of the skateboard decks. And there was a mural, I believe they used a Jim Marshall photograph, and you gave funds from that as well. So tonight we're hoping to raise, this is my pitch, just so you know. Tonight we're hoping to raise more funds to create a larger fellowship, and I think on most of the chairs there's little cards that you will find. And we're hoping that you might consider donating whatever. It could be a small amount. All this helps our students. These events are free because of the endowment that was created by the Logans. Also, Amelia and the Jim Marshall Estate have donated 2 amazing platinum prints, and also they're doing a special edition of 4 of Jim's photographs. And Amelia has graciously donated those prints with the funds. If you want to, they're not cheap, but Jim's work is really amazing. One of them is his famous Janis Joplin, and the other photographs is Miles Davis in the ring. 2 beautiful platinum prints, very small edition.
And they were printed by Chris McCaw, who was your student.
That's right. They're printed by Chris McCaw, master printer, in Jim's lifetime. And you can find out more information about that, and those funds will go towards the fellowship. And I think everyone has a postcard. I particularly want to thank Amelia and her partner, Bonita, who's sitting over there. Thank you, Bonita. We really appreciate it. And also for keeping Jim's legacy alive. And thank you for working with our staff. I know Leah's probably running around somewhere, but someone came up to me and said, "Oh, this is so organized." There's Leah going back there. Let's see. I don't know if she'll come in. But there she is. Leah! Leah. She is our ace event. She's disappearing. She is our ace events coordinator, and I could not do this without Leah's support and the work that she did to put this all together. I also want to thank Brian Brooks of Underdog Film Labs. Is Brian here somewhere? I don't know if he's here or not. But his photo shop in West Oakland has been printing our shows at incredibly amazing prices, which is so important for us to be able to do these shows. I was a friend of Jim's, and some of you, how many of you knew Jim? A few of you, yeah, of course. I was a friend of Jim's, and like most of his friends and acquaintances have lots of stories about him racing in his car, right? Thinking you were going to die. He had those racing car seat belts in case you died, maybe. Having dinner with him, having him share his photographs, giving me some prints of his photographs. But I think my favorite story of Jim was when he came to my 40th birthday party in Berkeley. He tried to pick up my mom. It gets better. He tried to pick up my mom while I was sitting on the porch of our house in Berkeley waiting for his cocaine dealer to show up. My mom wasn't interested, and I don't remember if his dealer came or not.
I'm left with leaving the rest of that joke alone.
But I mainly remember that Jim was incredibly focused and incredibly directed. He loved what he did, and he was incredibly good at it. He lamented to me and to others the change he saw in the music industry when the access that he had changed as the business of music became more about money and less about the cultural experience. You can see from the photos in the gallery and the photos in the book, and the book is for sale. There's some copies left. They'll be out in the lobby, and I know they're going to be signing books, so if you haven't gotten one, I hope you will. Jim had, in his day, unlimited access in the early days of rock and roll. And unlimited access, I mean, he was on the stage, he was in the back, he hung out with the musicians, he did drugs with the musicians, and I mean, he was incredibly close. He dived in fully with his Leicas, and I look forward to hearing firsthand from our panelists about his life and his work and how they put the book together, which is pretty incredible. And it's a great pleasure to have Dave Gans. And Dave, thank you so much for playing music. And thank you for taking my call when I was driving back from Tahoe. I called your radio program on Sirius, and you guys, and Amelia had been on, but she didn't pitch this event. So I called, and I'm driving in my car, and I'm on hold listening to Dave's program, and finally, hi, Ken, how are you?
The system works.
And Dave, and also Dan Sullivan is joining us. And Dave, thank you for your great music. It was really, really wonderful. So Amelia Davis, she is really unique in the history of rock and roll. She is the only person who could really get along with Jim Marshall. She spent 13 years as his assistant to this ornery genius. Her pleasant demeanor, balancing his craziness, his overindulgences, his blunt personality, but he could also be lovable.
He could.
Some days, right?
Some days, depending on the day.
Jim was really lucky. When he died in his sleep, alone in a New York hotel at the age of 74, Amelia was named as the only heir, and she inherited his archive. And that's why I say he was lucky. I mean, because photographers have their archives, and sometimes they just disappear into nothingness, or the family struggles with what to do with the work. And she has really worked incredibly hard to preserve his legacy and discover work that is hidden in his archive. So it's a pleasure to have Amelia join us tonight, and she will introduce our panelists, Dave Gans and Dan Sullivan, to talk about the work you see in the Logan Gallery and on the screen. So welcome, Amelia, and thank you so much.
Before we start, I wanted to ask one thing. John Logan and I were talking before we got rolling here, and he noticed that there are not very many tie-dyes here in the house. And I'm not sure it's a matter of concern, but I was just curious, how many people here are Deadheads, tie-dye notwithstanding? That's what I thought. Thank you.
Ask him how many people have smoked dope. How many people have smoked dope before they came in?
Edibles?
Yeah, right. Thank you. Thank you, Ken, for such the wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. And UC Berkeley, thank you so much. I mean, this fellowship, I think, is really, really important, and we depend on people donating to the fellowship to keep it going, especially today, because I think Jim's legacy was documenting pieces of history that will never happen again. And those pieces of history tend to repeat themselves. And so it's very important for young photojournalists to see that and to know that there is a way to document history as it's happening before them, and even without words, because photos can speak volumes just by themselves. And I think that's the beauty of UC Berkeley and the program that they have and the Jim Marshall Fellowship. So again, if you guys can contribute, it would really help with future generations of photojournalists. Also, I want to thank, I have to say, Yellow Rose Distillery, which we've all been drinking the whiskey. They're not here because they're based in Texas, but we worked with them. Jim loved whiskey. That was his drink of choice. And we always wanted to have a whiskey when Jim was alive, but we just never were able to. So when Jim passed away, finally, God, it's 15 years now. 15 years later, we have a Jim Marshall Outlaw whiskey. And we developed it on the tastes of all the whiskeys Jim loved. And I think it's a 116 proof, so it's cask strength. It's no joke. I think Jim would love it, but it also really celebrates Jim as a person and his outlaw side. And he never, was a normal guy. He always pushed boundaries. So thank you to Yellow Rose, and really thank you to Dan and to David, because the three of us worked really hard for this book. It took 2 years in the making. People don't realize what goes into a book, I think, until you actually sit down and do it. And Chronicle was a wonderful publisher. They were so collaborative in it, and we're really proud of it. And we almost made the New York Times bestseller list. Almost. So if you don't buy a book here, which you should, because there's 3 of us here that can sign it, go online and please buy it so we can make the New York Times bestseller list, right?
Can I recount for you the arduous process of creating this book? It was a really difficult challenge because there were more than 10,000 images to go through.
Yeah.
Right? But it was I had to go over to Amelia's house on an afternoon once or twice a month and sit with her for several hours and go through these photos. It was
Hell, it was hell.
that's I'm pretending to try to imply that it was, but it was just the sweetest and funnest damn thing. And Dan sort of became our investigator. He did the legwork to make sure we had accurate placement of all these images.
Yeah, it was a chore, but not. I mean, it was a joy to do. It really was, because with Jim's photography, and as Ken had said, a lot of times when a photographer dies and they don't have children or a wife who wants to take it over, it gets lost, or it goes into an institution that can't really afford to take care of it, so it gets locked away, and nobody sees it. So for me, with Jim, since he has documented so many important pieces of history, I really want to share that with the world, especially now. And by doing that, we do books. And in the books, we share that to the next generation of photojournalists. So this is one of those books. And I think, we decided we wanted to do a book for the 60th anniversary of the Grateful Dead forming as a band. And Jim was the man. I mean, he was there from the very beginning. He befriended the Grateful Dead. I think one of the biggest hurdles for us is Jim always made a 3x5 card on every single person that he had photographed. And on that 3x5 card were corresponding proof sheets and negatives, every proof sheet and every negative that he had taken of them. But he did not cross-reference. So for us, that meant not only the Grateful Dead, but looking at Janis Joplin, Big Brother and the Holding Company, the Charlatans, Quicksilver Messenger Service, the airplane. Then also looking at the venues where they held these events, so Fillmore, Winterland, Golden Gate Park, and also cross-referencing, what else did we do?
This festival, the
Festivals,
yeah.
yep, festivals.
And so you'd find a couple of Grateful Dead shots like just at the end of something else.
Yeah,
It was just, there were several of those, right?
There-
We're just incredibly lucky
yeah.
finds on your
Finds.
part, because you were digging through everything.
We were, God, and Benita, seriously, my wife, Benita, it does this with me, and she does not get as much credit as she should. So thank you, Benita. She really, people think that an archive has, 10 to 20 people. It's just the two of us. It's literally Benita and myself that run Jim Marshall and keep him alive. So when we were looking through proof sheets, I found one proof sheet that wasn't labeled on the Grateful Dead. And I saw it, I said, what is this bottom portion? And I looked at it, and I was like, oh my God, it's the Grateful Dead at 710 Ashbury from 1966. And I said, this is not recorded. I don't think, Jim probably knew he had it, but didn't record it. And the top half was a band called Sparrow, which is...
That was the precursor to the Steppenwolf. When they moved down here from Canada, they were trading as the Sparrow. And there's these amazing shots of them rehearsing at the heliport over there in Marin City.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah. So these are I really feel like I'm an archaeologist on a dig and unearthing these like gems that people haven't seen. And so it's fun to me to be able to do that and kind of birth these projects and share them with everybody. But in particular, this took us 2 years because we
Actually,
really...
three.
Three, yeah.
Three. Can I tell that story?
Yes, but I want to say the reason that it took so long is because we were meticulous, really. I mean, there's a lot of disinformation out there, not on purpose, but people's memories forget what year it was or where it was. And, yeah, wherever they were, whether they're high or not. And so we really wanted to make sure that we were as accurate as we could be, and that's why we dedicated the book to the best of our knowledge, because it really is the best of our knowledge that we did this whole book.
That's right.
So,
So 3 years ago, last month, there was a benefit screening of the Jim Marshall documentary, Show Me the Picture, the Jim Marshall story, which I can't recommend highly enough. It's a fantastic overview of Jim and his life. And anyway, there was a benefit screening for KPFA. We were over at the Elks Lodge off of Union Square in the city. And our friend Meg Schiffler was going to MC the panel discussion afterwards. Some of you may know Meg, but she got COVID. So who pinch hit? David Gans. So you have to picture this. Amelia had asked me to get involved in this project because she's not a Deadhead at all. And we're good friends, and I am a pretty big Deadhead. And she's like, we're going to do that Grateful Dead book, and we want you to write the text. And I'm like, well, that's cool, but I'm just a civilian. I'm just a fan. You need one of these professional Deadheads. So anyway, met David that night in the men's room at the Elks Lodge off of Union Square in San Francisco, and said, hey, David, I'm Dan. I'm Michelle's husband, and there's this project, and will you be interested? To which he responded, and I quote, hell yes. And that's how it started. That was August 3rd or something of 3 years ago.
well, then he came and asked me,
and that's
and
right.
then we said, yes,
Yep.
let's do it.
Yep. And then that was really
That was-
when
That was the
timeline
start of
started.
it,
Yeah,
yeah.
3 years really, if you date it from that.
So
But
one,
I'm not,
at least
not
this
just,
one,
wait, I have to make one thing, sorry. I'm not opposed to the Grateful Dead, but it really is not the music that I listen to. I'm a, classic rock gal, so it's, the Stones, the Who, those guys. But I do have to say, in taking on this project and doing it, I really did learn about the Grateful Dead through the photographs that Jim took. And for me, that was invaluable because I really was able to see how they were improvisational in how they presented their music, how they played their music. It was never the same. And just looking through Jim's photos, I was able to hear the music. And so for me, it was kind of a revelation. I still will not call myself a Deadhead. But I am a photographer, and I appreciate photography, and I think the beauty of Jim's photos is that they really speak to you and really tell you about who the Grateful Dead are.
Have you done acid?
No, I've never done acid.
Wednesday nights, and we're gonna
Okay.
I also talked to a lot of contemporaries of the Grateful Dead and people who knew Jim Marshall, and got to people that populate the images with captions and just little bits of things that added a lot to it. And we've been called out for that in a really satisfying way, that the book is a really good history because of all that. And I got to spend a glorious afternoon on a Zoom with Mountain Girl, going through hundreds of these images and recording her remarks, which wound up being probably 80 to 100 captions in the book that just added so much detail and depth to the images. So it was a wonderful, sweet project to be part of, an utterly frictionless collaboration, I have to say. I
Well,
count
you have
my
to
blessings.
tell them about when you showed Mountain Girl the photos that we had discovered at 710 Ashbury.
Yes, I wish if only we could sync up with the
Yeah.
slideshow. But
You'll see.
this one one strip, maybe 4 or 5 images that was at the end of another roll.
The sparrow roll.
Amelia found it, and I don't remember whether it just turned up in the course of one of our regular sessions. So we started looking at it, and it was clearly done at 710 Ashbury, but it had all these things in it. And it was a fascinating shot. And when MG got to that one, she just kind of lit up and went, oh, yeah, this was the upstairs parlor. All those Victorians had upstairs and downstairs living rooms, she said. And then she talks about everybody. She said it was late afternoon. The light was like that every day, late afternoon, coming in this upstairs parlor. And the guys in the band, there was somebody had like an Indian feather wig, and somebody else had something else, a fireman's cap, or various props were being passed around. And a joint, but not really. It's clearly not a session. It just kind of happened. But one of the things that's being moved around in this image is a rifle. And MG goes, oh yeah, that's that BB gun, that prankster, that Kesey painted that BB gun. She said, and she said it did. If you've shot a BB out of it, it'd go about 4 feet. She said.
But then
It
she
was-
said, "Sunshine, go get the gun."
Yeah, right. She said Sunshine was sort of helping with the Zoom interview. So Sunshine runs into another room and brings it back and
Yeah.
shows it to us.
She still had it. Yeah.
But it was so as a Deadhead, you all know this. It was so unnerving to see an image of Jerry Garcia holding a rifle. And there's somebody else's photos of Jerry with a rifle up at Mickey's Ranch. He's wearing a serape. I think it's one of those. Jim was around for some of that because some of those pictures are in. I can't remember. But it was so unnerving to see Jerry holding a rifle, and it was such a relief to find out that it was a BB gun.
Yeah.
A broken,
Yeah.
rusty,
Weak-ass
Day-Glo
B-
painted BB gun from Ken Kesey.
Yeah. Well, the other fun thing that we found out too from Mountain Girl was that she complained that Jerry always wore black, like a black shirt and a black sweater. So she was like, I gotta add color somehow. So she would take colored ribbons and tie them onto his black shirts and his black sweaters just to add color, which was really cool. And we also found out that the women played a big role in the band, and because they were the ones that were bringing in the money. The guys were playing for free. So Suzela, who was Bill Kreutzmann's wife, had a used clothing store in San Rafael, I think it was San Rafael, and they would sell used clothing, and then they decided to do a tie-dye shirt, and they sold it, and it did well. So they were the first to do tie-dye birch.
Oh, I don't think they were. No, they made the Pigpen shirt and Grateful Dead shirts. It was Courtney Pollock was the guy that came along and brought the tie-dye into that world.
Well, she said
But they were
Suzela.
selling, everybody was making stuff to sell in the store. All the Grateful Dead women were making things to
Yeah.
sell in the store. And yeah, they were bringing in some needed money when every other nickel was being invested in sound systems.
Well, and they said that V, who was Pigpen's girlfriend, was actually a nurse. So she was going to nursing school when she was with them. And she had to cut her afro They made her cut it when she went to nursing school. So that was another interesting little tidbit that we found out.
So I think the subtitle of the book is, Photos and Stories. And it's these stories that David was able to dig up with his connections with the Grateful Dead family that I think really helped distinguish this book. The photos speak for themselves. We knew going in that Jim's work speaks for itself. It would be amazing, and it blew our minds as we went through the archive. But as David's interviews started coming in, I had the pleasure of transcribing them and listening to them. I'm like, oh my gosh. So these examples are, we carried through many of the other. Jorma Kaukonen from Jefferson Airplane had amazing things to say. Jack Cassidy from the Airplane. David Getz from Big Brother.
Michael Shreve.
Michael Shreve from Santana.
It's not huge blocks of text. It's a photo book. And these are sort of a garnish in there among them. But a lot of people had useful things to say. David Getz was an art school guy, a trained visual artist. So he gave us a nice take on Jim in the context of documentary photographers of the 20th century. Michael Shreve told us a little bit about his musical history as it overlapped the rest of them. So yeah, there's little useful bits of stuff, but Dan gave us a really nice essay about, the Grateful Dead and what it meant. And we had other people. Peter Richardson gave us a story, an essay putting the Grateful Dead in the context of West Coast culture of the 20th century, et cetera. And Bill Shapiro, who is a photo editor at Life magazine for several decades, gave us an essay about Jim in the context of photography. And Blair Jackson wrote a funny, short piece about what it was like as a magazine editor to try to do business with Jim.
Can you share some of this stuff with us?
It's in the book.
It is, it's in the book.
But just to finish my point, the thing that came through for me through all this is, how did Jim see the Grateful Dead? How did he experience? He was friends. He was family with them. This was a family scene in the beginning. They were not famous. This is starting in January of 1966 at the Trips Festival. It was the first time he photographed them. And it goes through 1977, but the bulk of it is like 66 to 71, let's say, roughly. And you'll see that there's a lot of pictures of the literal family, the partners, the wives and girlfriends, along with the stories. There's beautiful pictures. What he was photographing was, the birth of the global counterculture, the youth counterculture at the time, at the macro level. It's also sort of a diaristic view of this family scene as it was being played out and developing very organically. It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful portraits of his friends, his family. And that's what I think really distinguishes this. There's plenty of, stage shots, but what's different, you'll see as you go through the book, is a lot of basically family photos. Beautiful.
There's something extraordinary about the stage shots, too. Not the one we're looking at now, that's medium distance, but Jim was able to get closer to people with his lens than most photographers would ever have the nerve to do. And there's just tremendously intimate images all throughout here, on stage and off. Because even on stage, man, there's shots from that Haight Street thing where he's like on the stage under Jerry and shit, and then 5 minutes later he's up on the roof of the Straight Theater. But he got close, and he did not use long telephoto lenses. He got close.
And the photojournalism school people will understand this, is Jim used Leicas, which were completely manual cameras. And they were different in the sense that they were rangefinders, so you weren't looking through the lens, you were looking to the side of the lens, which actually forced him to compose the photo more. So what you actually saw in that rangefinder is what you got. And you also loaded the film from the bottom. So it was very difficult. But Jim knew his camera so well and his equipment so well that it was like an extension of himself. It was all manual, so he set everything. He used Tri-X 400 film, black and white film, and Kodachrome. So he usually had 5 cameras around his neck loaded with Tri-X and with Kodachrome. But he also used fixed lenses. And that's what people don't understand today, because they have zoom lenses, so they can be at a concert and be back here and zoom in. Jim, it was a fixed lens. So literally, with a 50 millimeter lens, you'd have to be right this close. And so Jim was able to do that, but not intrude in their space. And that's what the photos are. So Jim was able to be there, and they didn't feel threatened. They didn't even know he was there. And he took the photo. And I think that's what made Jim, is that he really was able to blend in with his subjects and the environment and become part of it. And so it was almost as if he was part of the band himself, too. So when they were playing, he was part of the band playing, but his instrument was the camera, right? So I think that's what really you'll see in these photographs. And the other thing we did was non-chronological. And I'm really happy that we did that, because it really goes to the ethos of the Grateful Dead, just kind of, improvising and doing things as it came. And that's how you get the book. You're surprised by the next page, and it's not something that you expect. And you read these stories, and you get very fully immersed in the story and the culture.
And we handed this stuff to the designers at Chronicle Books and said, don't put it in chronological order. So we threw down and said, find another organizing principle for this stuff. And they did. It was
They were
magnificently.
Great. Yeah, they were a wonderful publisher to work with. They really were very collaborative, jumped right in and just did what we asked. We said this is how we'd like to see it, and they did what we wanted. And we had a great designer, Fez Moreno. He's a poster artist, and he does the posters for Dead and Company. And he devised the cover, the raised, lettering. That's Fez. He did that himself. And all the...
He's wondering if that's a fez on your shirt.
I think it might be.
Don't be alarmed.
But he also did the wonderful illustrations before each person's essay. So he kind of he read the essays and then interpreted them and did a beautiful piece of artwork next to everybody's essays. So Fez was wonderful.
Another level that you can enjoy this book on, it really resonated for me, is it's the history of San Francisco. It's incredible. The neighborhoods, the people, the architecture, the parks. Hello. It's just amazing for anybody who has an interest in local history. It's not just the counterculture explosion. It is very much that, but it's really interesting too to just, Panhandle, October 1966.
And what they used for speakers in those days.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That right there, that woman is a process server. We thought there was a much more interesting story behind it, but nobody could remember anything more.
Well,
I sent the photo to Mickey, and he didn't remember anything about it.
but then we found the 8x10 of that photograph, and on the back of it, in Jim's writing was, they dosed the process server. So she was dosed, and they were laughing that she was handing them this legal paper and they had dosed her. So, but that's also really the beauty of Jim's photos too, is sometimes if you couldn't find the description on the 3x5 card, a lot of times on the back of the proof sheets or on the back of the photos themselves, Jim in his own writing said what it was. So that was kind of a gem that we found that, because they didn't remember. All right, so should we do some questions? Do people have questions?
Sorry, I'm going to give you a mic just because.
Oh, sure. I'm really interested in the history and meaning of Jim Marshall and the middle finger. Is there a story?
He was that kind of guy.
It wasn't in anger. He was asking them to do it?
It was his hello to people, and that was their hello back to him, was the middle finger. And you have it. We've found it throughout his entire archive. So not just the Grateful Dead, but Johnny Cash. God,
He took
everybody.
that picture of Johnny Cash, the famous, right.
The famous one.
But those pictures could not have been meant for publication in the 60s, right? So
No, that's not necessarily true. Because for Jim, that was, like I said, that was kind of like a hello to them. So for Jim, it wasn't fuck you. It wasn't a bad thing. It was just, yeah, hey, you.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was
Bonding. Yes,
the
it
way
was
people
bonding.
behaved with each other in a certain era.
Hi. So this is the 60s, early 70s, and you guys have now, like I'm sure, internalized the spirit, the soul of Jim Marshall, in a way that very few people can. But also we're looking at these pictures, and I keep thinking, because I used to be a musician, and I became a photographer because a photographer showed me pictures of us rehearsing. And it was magical. I was like, you got to show me how to do that. What did you learn about how the band thought about being photographed all the time?
Well, the Grateful Dead didn't like it, really. And we talked with Justin Kreutzmann, Bill Kreutzmann's son, who said, who's a filmmaker. And he said the Grateful Dead didn't really like having their photographs taken. But Jim was able, it was trust. So with Jim, he was able to gain their trust, and they knew that any photo he took of them would be good.
Yes.
It would not be a bad photo.
But I gathered from a conversation with Bob Weir many years ago, there was a sort of an ongoing effort to subvert one another whenever they try to have a formal photo made. And Bobby thought their real main mission was to try and make him cry.
Yeah, that's true.
And Donna Jean Godchaux said that they were so uncomfortable being in front of cameras that they'd always just turned into a comedy routine. And you see that. So going by in one of these, in this carousel, is a photo of the Grateful Dead from, I think, 1977. And it was like nothing. They had put zero effort into it. Phil Lesh was wearing a T-shirt and a necktie around his neck.
Unshaven. He looks like hell.
Yeah, they all look like somebody just woke them up. And Justin Kreutzmann, the caption on Justin's like, this is their fucking band photo for the year, and they gave, 10 minutes here?
That's true. That's true.
It was that they didn't really love having their picture taken, but look at all these amazing photos that Jim took of them. Years and years ago, I was one of those people, one of those journalists. I was an author. I tried to buy photos from him for books, and he was really difficult to deal with on that stuff. And he would scream at you and deny whatever that you were trying to do, and then send you home with a couple of prints just 'cause, which was really, really, really nice of him.
Yeah.
Can I get a follow-up?
Yeah.
So the other thing about these strikes me, I don't know how many pictures of rock bands from pick a decade I look at, and it's like, I don't know who these guys are. I have no clue. But it's a cool photo, or something like that. So a lot of these, just in this carousel, and I know this is like the tiniest slice of the collection, they kind of have a mythic quality, They have a way of okay, these are defining what photographs of rock performers are supposed to look like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Well, that's very true. I'm sorry to interject, but Jim was a pioneer in music photography. And I think Annie Leibovitz even said he was the rock and roll photographer because just of what you're seeing. He was able to get in there and photograph and document these pieces of history and the true person. They're not sitting there smiling or posing. It's really in the moment. And Jim always said he was a reporter with a camera. And that's how he approached his photos, as a reporter. So what he saw, he photographed. And it was very much as Cartier-Bresson, the decisive moment. So you can't retake that photograph, right? It is basically in that moment. You can't restage it. And that's what Jim was able to do, is really capture these moments from a time that will never happen again.
And it's sort of especially interesting in the context of the Grateful Dead because they weren't at all flashy in how they behaved on stage. There's no Pete Townsend, jumping, leaping, and up and down and stuff. I mean, Jerry Garcia just stood there and played. But goddamn, but he found the moments, that there were to be found. Well, there's a whole sequence from the Newport Folk Festival in 1968 where they're slammed up against these giant speakers making feedback. It's just,
There's a Newport Pop.
Oh, Newport Pop, right? Just wonderful, wonderful.
Which is
picture.
interesting because that festival, a lot of people don't know about. You talk about it and you talk about Newport Pop 1968. People are like, why did I not know about this? But it was huge. I mean, it was, I think, the first festival. It was down in Newport, down in Southern California. And it was the first rock festival that had 100,000 people in attendance. And it was way more than they thought they would have. So they were understaffed. The people freaked out. There were not enough bathrooms. People had hoses. They were hosing themselves down. They were rolling in the mud, but then they realized that was not so great because it was so hot. It caked on them. So it was just, but they had every single band there. I mean, it was, everybody. So it truly was fun to look through those photographs. And I think Mountain Girl, David said that's when they had never played in front of that many people before, so they had to really make sure they were given it all, and that's when you see them going up against the speakers, going like that.
Yeah, the Mountain Girl stuff just adds so much to the sense of development. She talks about, there's very famous shots of Jerry and Mountain Girl at Monterey Pop. And she just talked about how that was really a step up for them. Whatever Jerry said, his self-deprecating stuff about, we had to go on between those amazing acts, blah, blah, blah. It still was a monumental thing for the Grateful Dead to be on that bill and to have been there among all those people. And to hear Mountain Girl, who was, there and right next to it, but not in it, her observations about it are just priceless.
Yeah, about these pictures here of their last concert on Haight Street in March of 1968. It's really interesting. She said, until we saw Jim's pictures, we had no idea the scope. I mean, these pictures are, it's like Cole, I guess, and Hayes, where they set up in front of this. She's like, we're down there. We can't see it. And when they saw those pictures that Jim took, it was a revelation to them.
But he was running around too.
He was everywhere.
He was like everywhere.
He was everywhere. He was on the flatbed looking up, as David said. He climbed up onto the roof of an apartment building that's across the street. He went up onto the roof of the Straight Theater, which is not there anymore. But anyway, his picture's looking straight down. And he took those famous pictures that are used on the inside gatefold cover of Live Dead, looking the whole length of Haight Street, completely full of people. It's amazing. Anyway, point being, for Mountain Girl, she's like, that was a revelation to them. They were just in the eye of the storm, and Jim captured it from
everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
Did any of you
Sorry,
see
can you just give me the mic?
Yeah. Hello? Yes.
Hello.
Oh, has any of you seen the current exhibit at the De Young where Paul McCartney is taking photos of photographers of the Beatles?
Yeah.
The contrast is so strong. I can't figure out a good description of what is so different, but it is so different.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe because Paul McCartney wasn't a professional photographer and Jim Marshall at least became one, but wow, it's so different.
It is, because he wasn't and Jim has photos of the Beatles, their last concert at Candlestick Park in 1966, and you can see Paul McCartney with his camera. And Ringo Starr, actually Ringo Starr had a camera too and took photos. So it's a different point of view because it's the musician and how they see people seeing them. It is a very interesting. And he doesn't say that he's a professional photographer. He says in the exhibit that, I was a Beatle photographing what I saw. But you could see he had a real sense of composition. And so he did have a very good gut, natural ability for what he was seeing. And I think it is an interesting exhibit to see it through the Beatles,
So this question is for Amelia. So you work with Jim for about 13 years, you said, right? So could you learn by osmosis about what it would be to become a photographer, and what advice would you give to the younger generation about learning from those professional photographers?
Wow. That is a good question. Well, I myself studied photography at UC Davis before I met Jim, but I never knew who Jim was because it was fine art photography. So it was Helen Levitt, Cartier-Bresson, Bruce Davidson, that kind of stuff. So he really wasn't in my wheelhouse. So when I finally did meet Jim and start working for him, it was a completely different kind of photography that I was used to seeing or knowing about. And it was through talking with Jim and Jim showing me the photos and telling me the stories about how he took these photographs and the trust that he gained from the musicians, that I really gained an appreciation for that kind of photography, to really document. And he was married twice, divorced twice, had no children, thank God, because photography was his life. It was his first love. So for Jim, it was photography 24/7. And he really felt like he had to document everything he saw. So he never left home, even when I was working for him, and he was older. He was in his 60s, so he really wasn't working that much anymore. Every time he left the house, he would pick up his Leica camera and put it around his neck. Just out of habit, that if I see something that's intriguing, I have to capture it. So I think for younger generations, I think they need to know that to always be ready, always have a camera with them. I mean, that's really important because there's so many times that we see something and it's like, God, I wish I had my camera, and you don't get it. So always have your camera with you, and always, no matter how insignificant you may think it is, if you want to photograph it, photograph it. And that's what Jim did with the peace symbol. He photographed the peace symbol from 60 to 69. And most people would walk down the street and see a peace sign in the sidewalk and just walk right past it. Jim didn't. He was like, there's something there. So I think for younger photojournalists, they need to really always have their camera and always be looking. Always look around you, and don't be afraid to document something that you think is insignificant, because it might be very significant later on. And, photography is such a great tool to tell a story. And I think we need to get back into really teaching that, and that's what UC Berkeley does. It's just amazing that to tell a story through photography, and I think we need to do that now more than ever, and really document what is happening, and that it is real, and that it is happening, and that you can, tell this very powerful story through photography. So.
Hi. I'm wondering how often Jim would show these candid photos to the band members.
To the band members? I think if they came over, he showed them to him. Really, he was very open. Everybody would come over to his house, and he had his drawers of photographs, and he had photos that were matted sitting around. And so I think, if they wanted to come over and look through them, he was like, yeah, come on and see them. He didn't hide them, and he didn't edit things. He didn't, not show people. So he was very open about that. And he even joked and said, my phone number is in the phone book. We don't have phone books anymore, but my phone number's in the phone book. Anybody could just call him up and come over and see him. And actually, it's funny, for younger photographers, they did call Jim up and they'd say, hey, I'd like, I have these photographs. Would you look at them? And Jim was like, sure, come on over. And Jim never wanted to be discouraging. So he would look at somebody's photographs, a young photographer, and if they weren't great, he didn't want to discourage them. So he'd say, you're really good at taking photos of the crowd. I think you should concentrate on that. You're a very good people photographer. So he would never discourage them. Yeah, they did. Oh, yeah. They would come over to his apartment all the time. He lived on Union Street before he lived on 16th Street, and 16th Street was his last residence when he passed away. But Union Street, the door was always open, and they would always go in and look at any photo. It was open.
Maybe another question for you, Amelia. So, how did you meet him, and then what was the first meeting like? What did you bring with you to convince him that you would be the person to?
Okay. So, I did not know who Jim was. So my friend was having her 30th birthday party, and I was invited. And unbeknownst to me, she knew Jim. So I went there, and there was this little man with a light around his neck, and he shuffled over to me, and he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" I said, "Hi." And he goes, "I'm Jim Marshall. Who are you?" And so I was like, "Hi, I'm Amelia Davis." And we started he goes, "What do you do?" I go, "I'm a photographer." I go, "What do you do?" And he smiled, and he said, "I'm a photographer." And so we started talking. And at the time, I was actually doing a book on breast cancer survivors because my mother had breast cancer, and I wanted to document the journey. And he said, "Wow, that's really important stuff. I have a lot of friends who have had breast cancer. I'd love to help you however I can." And then he goes, "Where do you live?" And I told him where I lived, and he goes, which is in the Castro in San Francisco. And then he goes, "Oh my God, I live a block away from you." And then he looks at me and he goes, "Wait, are you gay?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he goes, "Oh, I'm always attracted to gay women or married women." And I looked at him and I go, "That's your problem, not mine." And he laughed and he said, "I think we're going to be really good friends." And so we exchanged phone numbers, and the next day he called me up and he's like, "Hey, I liked you. You want to come have coffee?" So I said, "Sure." We had coffee, and I was a starving artist. And he goes, "I like you. I need an assistant. You want to be my assistant?" And I said, "Sure, why not? I need money." And he goes, "Let's go look at, come show you the apartment." So we walked up to his apartment. He opened the door down this long hallway. There was Johnny Cash flipping the bird, Jimi Hendrix burning his guitar at Monterey Pop, the Beatles' last concert at, Candlestick Park, and Miles in the Ring. And I was like, "Oh my God, I had no idea that was you." I was so embarrassed. And he goes, "I know, that's why I liked you." And it was from then on that we became friends. And I think, it worked out because I didn't know who he was, and we just met on, mutual terms of photography, and then just developed a lifelong friendship, So that's how that happened. And Benita came along for the ride.
Hi. You mentioned early at the beginning that, he had very familial, almost complete access to them at the beginning of this period. And then towards the end, you said as music became more commercialized, which it did, you sort of lost access. So I was actually wondering if you could elucidate on the end a little bit, this later period, and what the shift was and how that sort of changed his relationship to it all.
Yeah, photography in the very beginning, you didn't have handlers, you didn't have, PR people, you didn't have any of that. The access was there. And that's what Jim demanded, was access. He wanted to be able to photograph the way he saw it and not have somebody tell him how he should photograph it. But then music photography, I'd say probably in the 70s started to really change, and the bands, were more restricted. And the PR people and their managers said, "You can't photograph them if their hair isn't combed or they look this way." And, that drove Jim crazy. And he just said, "Well, then I'm not photographing. Unless I have full access, fuck y'all. I'm just going to take my camera and go." Which is, is a big thing because he was a living, working photographer. So if he did not take photographs, he couldn't pay his rent. But that's how strongly he felt about having full control over his photographs. And then he said, you know, I can't photograph that way. And then it became where the photographers would shoot in a pit. So everybody's looking up. They all get the same photograph. They have maybe 3 minutes to photograph, 3 songs. 3 songs. And then the band started saying, we own those photographs. You take those, we own the copyrights. And Jim said, no way. And Jim was ahead of his time. He always retained the copyrights to every single photo he took. He would not give them up. So that was a big deal for him, and that's why he said no. So he really wanted to hold on to those copyrights, and it's a good thing he did because, you know, his children cared for him later in life. And he always said, you know, I took care of my children, and then they take care of me later in my life. So I think that was just, you know, sticking to his principles and saying, I am not going to, you know, do it your way.
Jim took very good care of his children. I interviewed him for BAM magazine in 1978, and he told me lots of stories about how he protected his work. There was a record store right near where we're sitting right now that was selling a bootleg album with one of Jim's photos of Johnny Cash on the cover. And he went in there and demanded that they give him the records or whatever. And they wouldn't. So he called the feds on him.
And the feds actually arrested them. There was a bootleg. It was Johnny Cash and Bob Dylan on the cover. Yeah. From a TV show.
Rather ripped records right here in Berkeley back in the day.
Yeah.
I think we have one here.
Hi, I was wondering, excuse me, I guess photography is kind of a solitary profession, but I wonder if Jim Marshall had relationships with other rock and roll photographers of the time, like Henry Diltz and Baron Wallman, and I guess Herbie Green was probably around.
Yeah, they were all really good friends, all of them, because they were kind of the only ones there doing it at that time. There weren't hundreds of, you know, music photographers. So in the Bay Area, it was Baron Wellman, Gene Anthony, Herbie Green, Annie Leibovitz was later. But they all knew each other. They were all very friends, great friends, and they all, you know, collaborated, helped each other and worked together. So it could, I mean, I think people do think it could be a solitary thing, but they developed friendships with each other, and they respected each other, and they traded each other's photographs. So it was very interesting because they were all very different in how they photographed bands, and each one of them respected that. And so they would trade photographs. He'd say, hey, I love this photograph that you took of Joni Mitchell. And they'd say, oh, I love this photo that you took of Jerry Garcia. And they would trade. So in the archive, we actually have this beautiful collection of other photographers' photographs.
Nice.
Yeah, it's
Herbie
really cool.
was obviously kind of the opposite of Jim in many ways. He gave me some lovely quotes for the book. He talked about he really didn't like doing concert photography because it involved getting in front of somebody else who was trying to watch the show. And think about that. And you know, and there's Jim Marshall would get exactly where he needed to get exactly where he wanted to be. But Herbie was as gentle as Jim was aggressive, and so he concentrated on studio stuff.
And his stuff was cool because it was very fashion-like, Herbie's. So it was, large format too. Yes, very different.
So did he have his own dark room? Did he have his own dark room, and did he develop all his stuff himself?
He did in the beginning because he was, like I was saying, a working, living photographer, so he wasn't making a lot of money. So he did have to develop his own film and enlarge his own photographs, and he is actually really good at it. I mean, we have some stuff that he printed in the archive, and it's beautiful. But Jim hated doing that because he had ADD, right? So he was just like, could not sit still. And he was always going on to the next thing. So you had to be very precise in a dark room, and, you know, it was methodical. And he did it because he had to, but the minute he could make enough money to have a lab do it, he had a lab do it. But he worked with the lab. So he worked very closely with them and told them what he wanted, how he wanted to look. So he had very much control into how the lab printed his work and developed his film.
Well, that's so hard because, you know, when you're developing, you're seeing a picture completely different.
Yeah.
And you're, you know, framing it and doing, you know, getting the light correctly. And so it's hard, because as a photographer, I know that was very hard to
Yeah.
give somebody else
Control.
control.
Yeah. But the people he found, he trusted and he worked with, and, you know, he knew that they could get the finished product that he liked and he wanted. So.
Let's take one more question.
Yes, we haven't heard from that lady before.
So could you tell me where the archives are kept now and what the ultimate disposition of them might be? Might we see them at the Bancroft Library, perhaps?
That's an ongoing question. At this point, we have it in a secure storage facility. I will not give the address where it is because it's like Area 51. But yeah, I made sure to house. I mean, I got everything. So not only the negatives, but all the photographs, his boxer shorts, his penny loafers, everything. So it's all in a. Yeah. Yes, we have his guns and his knives, and they're all in a secure storage facility. But yes, eventually, it is a lot of work for just two of us, Benita and myself. I would like to leave it to an institution that can care for it and that would actually show the work and not just lock it away. So that's one of the criteria. So, yeah. So we haven't found that institution yet, but, you know, hopefully we will.
Thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you.
Thank you, UC Berkeley Graduate School of
yes.
Journalism.
Yes, that's.
You guys rock. Now more than ever.
Yeah.
We need you. We need you. Thank you.